Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says push for entrepreneurs. This article here is speaking about one person company. Let's try and understand what is this concept of one person company. When we speak about companies, company is an incorporated association, which basically means there are two and more people who form this particular company. This happens to be an artificial juristic person that which has a separate legal entity. So when we speak about a company, the general understanding is that this particular company will have two or more people. When we look into the company, there are two types of company. One is what is called as the public company. The other is what is called as the private company. What is this public company? Basically, if there is a particular company that which is listed, recognized in the stock market, that is what is called as the public company. There is another company which is not recognized in the stock market and it does not have securities which is released into the general forum, but all its securities are held privately by its members. So a public company is the one which is present on the stock market. A private company is one which does not or is not present on the stock market, and this ultimately means when it comes to the naming convention, a private company will require an extension of what is called as the private limited, but when it comes to the public company, they don't have to associate their company with the word private. Another important difference is with respect to the directors and the members in that particular company. When it comes to the public company, we require a minimum of 3 directors and a minimum of 7 members to operate that particular company. When it comes to the private company, it requires a minimum of 2 directors and it also requires a minimum of 2 members who are required to form a private company. But there is a third type of company which is called as one person company. So what is this one person company? As the very name denotes, it is one person. So one person will be the director. It is one person who owns this particular company, and this person will be the only member who will be taking the management of this particular company. So when it comes to the director, with respect to the one person company, the directors will be one and the maximum number of the people who will take up the management role will also be one. This is defined under section 2 of 62 of the Companies Act of 2013. Do remember, this very concept of one person company did exist in number of countries, but when it comes to India, it was introduced in the Companies Act of 2013. We did have the Companies Act of 1956 as well. This particular law did not have any provision, but the concept of one person company was introduced only with the Companies Act of 2013 on the recommendation of the expert committee, which was headed by Dr. J.J. Irani in the year 2005. So only after this particular committee was appointed, they understood the benefits of it. That is why they created what is called as the one person company under section 2 of 62 of the Companies Act of 2013. Now the question is, why this company was introduced? What are the advantages of this particular company? Another important question is, does it mean that only one person company is present? No. The answer to this is, apart from the single person company, there is another company or what is called as the sole proprietorship model. What is this sole proprietorship? This is a type of a model. How does it work? There is a single person. He happens to be the single owner. He would obviously be able to generate the profits. But when it comes to the operation of this particular type of company, it acts as a single entity. So the company and the individual are not separate, but they are a single identity because he happens to be the owner and he is also able to generate profits as well. But when it comes to the one person company, there is what is called as the separate entity. So what is the separate entity? The company is different, the owner is different. So there are two different aspects. One side there is the company, and on the other side there is a person who is investing in the company. But when it comes to the single proprietorship, the owner, the company, everything happens to be one single entity. Apart from this, whenever we start a one person company, they would have a limited liability. But when it comes to the proprietorship, what we have is an unlimited liability. What do we mean by it? Let's say, for example, there is a particular company. This particular company is started. Let's say I have invested about 10 lakh in this particular company, and now my company is under loss. In case there are losses, in case I have to pay someone, and if the company is to be liquidated, the amount of losses is only restricted to the investment. But let's say, for example, if it is sole proprietorship, if the investment is about 10 lakh and if I have suffered more losses, so the liability is not just restricted to about 10 lakhs, but it can also take up my personal property as well. So when it comes to the one person company, there is limited liability. So whatever investment has been made by that particular person, only when it is liquidated, that amount is what will be taken into confidence for the liability. But when it comes to the sole proprietorship, there is unlimited liability, which means a person's property can also be taken into picture. His personal assets can also be taken into picture in order to make sure that in case there is a loss, the amount is paid back to whosoever it is concerned. That is why they came up with a concept of what is called as single person company, so that there is limited liability and this acts as a separate entity. Apart from this, when you look into the JJ Irani committee, it also went on to say that there are number of people who also want to be the business entrepreneurs. They want to start up a particular program or a particular enterprise as well. But if they do start a particular company, they have to comply by number of rules and regulations. If you're starting off with a company, you have to pay a lot of money to the government. They have to make sure that there are number of rules and regulations that they stick to. But when it comes to the one person company, the same need not have to be maintained as well. What are we looking at? What we have to look at when it comes to the one person committee, there are many procedural requirements which need not have to be complied by that particular company. Let's say, for example, a one person company does not need to conduct an annual general meeting, which is a requirement for other companies. So when you look at the public company or the private company, all these people will have to conduct what is called as the annual general meetings. This is not the requirement when it comes to one person company. Apart from this, a one person company also does not require signatures of both its company secretary and the director on its annual report. One is enough when it comes to the one person company. But for the rest of the companies, there are other regulations, other requirements that they have to follow. What it means is, when it comes to the one person company, the requirements are less. It also means they have to compile less when it comes to the management protocols, and as a result, more people would step into the enterprise of the company. They would be able to generate benefits, and ultimately it means there are more entrepreneurs who are coming onto the platform, and then they generate more jobs in the economy. So what are the advantages? The advantages are, there will be only limited liability, the brand image will also increase over a period of time, and these people will also have access to the bank's funding as well. Why? When it comes to the sole proprietorship, there was a problem that sole proprietors, since they were the owners, they had a single entity, it was not a separate entity. Banking system were not ready to lend loans to these people. But when it comes to this one person company, there were more access to the banks as well, they were getting more funding as well, and they had more control when it comes to the company, the director, and the efficient management. In the earlier system of proprietorship, what we had was the unlimited liability, but here what we have is the limited liability when it comes to the one person company. Apart from this, the recognition of the single person economic entity also lightens number of small traders, artisans, service providers to venture into the arena of business. That is how they would be able to expand the opportunities, limiting their liability with minimum procedures that which they have to follow with respect to the one person company. So this is what we have to understand with respect to one person company. But there were concerns and criticisms with respect to the one person company. So what are those criticisms? Which say whenever a one person company has to be starting, it has to be a person who has to be a natural person. So what do we mean by a natural person? I am a natural person, you are a natural person, people are the natural persons. So a natural person would be able to establish it. But at the same time, if it is a juristic person, like for example a company or a limited, such companies would not be able to start one person company. So it has to be a natural person. Then the person who is starting this one person company has to be an Indian citizen. So a foreigner cannot come to India, he cannot start what is called as the one person company, and at the same time he has to be a resident in India. So apart from the criteria that this particular person is an Indian citizen, he also has to reside in India for a particular number of days. So it means, so the resident in India should have stayed in India for more than 182 days during immediately preceding one calendar year. So he should not only be a citizen of India, but he should have resided in India for 182 days preceding one calendar year, which is what was making the establishment of one person company a problem, says this article. Apart from this, there was also another provision as well. That is, let's say there is a one person company. This one person company had a two provisions of converting into a private company. One is on the compulsory basis, the other is on the voluntary basis. So if there is a person who has started this one person company, he had every option to convert it into a private company whenever he desires, or there was what is called as the compulsory one. What is this compulsory one? Let's say the paid up share capital exceeded 50 lakhs and the annual turnover is about 2 crores, then it is an obligatory for that particular one person company to be converted into a private limited company. On one side, he had his own discretion to convert his one person company into a voluntary company. That is not our problem, but the problem is in case the paid up capital exceeds 50 lakhs and if the turnover of this particular company is more than 2 crore. Kindly note, we are not speaking about the profits, we are speaking about the turnover. If the paid up capital and the turnover is exceeding to the number as prescribed, by default this particular company will be converted into a private limited company. So these were the two major criticisms and concerns when it comes to the one person company. But recently we had the finance minister who has introduced changes when it comes to these criticisms. What are the changes? Earlier, this particular timeline was about 182 days. This 182 days has now been reduced to about 120 days. So if he is a citizen of India and if he happens to stay only for 120 days, then such a person would be able to start what is called as the one person company. And at the same time, earlier the non-resident Indians did not have any provision to start the one person company. Now they are in a position to start the one person company, is the new change introduced by the budget 2021. And apart from this, there has also been a change with respect to the paid up capital as well as the annual turnover. The budget 2021 goes on to say the capital base limit has been increased from 50 lakh to 2 crores and the turnover limit has been increased from 2 crore to 20 crore. It has also made sure that this compulsory criteria is completely done away with and they have the voluntary option still at their discretion and at their disposal. In case they want to continue with this one person company, they can continue to do so, and this provision of compulsory conversion is completely eliminated, is what happened in the budget 2021. The article currently goes on to say, according to the data compiled by Multi Information Bulletin on corporate sector, there are about 34,235 one person companies out of a total number of 1.3 million active companies in India as on December 31st, 2020. The number of OPCs was 2,238 out of total 1 million companies as on March 2015. Data also shows that more than half of the OPCs are in the business services. These are some of the statistics given by the article. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says water scarcity likely in the Himalayan catchment if warming continues. Before we understand what this article is, let's try and understand the importance of Himalayas to India as well as to other countries as well. When you look at Himalayas, it is called as the water tower of Asia. Why is it called as the water tower of Asia? That is because it has glaciers, it also has snow. It is one of the regions where number of rivers originate and millions and billions of people get water because of the Himalayas. Let's take the example of India. Let's take the example of Pakistan, Nepal, China and Bangladesh. So all these countries get their water whose source is from Himalayas, and that is the primary reason it is called as the water tower of Asia. With most of the rivers now having their source from the Himalayas, what we also have to understand is the water that which is taken from the Himalayas because of the melting of the glaciers or its source from the Himalayas provide number of economic advantage. What are those? One is in terms of drinking water. So the drinking water for India, which gives water to millions of people, is from the Himalayas. Apart from this, it is a source of irrigation as well, and this irrigation water is used for agricultural purposes. It is also used for industrial purposes, and finally it is also used for generation of hydroelectricity from this particular water, which has its source from the Himalayan region. So all these are the major advantages of Himalayas because it is called as the water tower of Asia. Apart from this, they also play another important role as well. One is in terms of monsoon, the other is preventing the cold air from the northern part of Asia. What are we looking at? When it comes to India, we have what is called as the monsoon type of climate. When it comes to the monsoon type of climate, what happens is the water from this particular ocean is drifted towards the land during the summer months. This moisture ultimately would have traveled out of Himalayas, and this would have provided water if Himalayas were not present. But because of Himalayas, all the rain happens in the country of India and the regions around it, and beyond Himalayas it becomes what is called as the region of rain shadow. So because of the Himalayas, it is preventing the moisture from going beyond Himalayas, and ultimately it means we have the rain that strikes the Indian part or the Indian subcontinent. And at the same time, we also know for the fact that the northern part of Asia is comparatively temperate in region, which means the cold waves do hit Indian region. But what is stopping it from entering India? That is also once again Himalayas. So it is the Himalayas which is helping in making sure that there is precipitation, rain, monsoon when it comes to India by preventing the moisture laden winds going beyond Himalayas, and at the same time it is also preventing the cold winds that are emanating from the northern part of Asia to enter into Asia. So it is acting as a barrier. On the other side, it is also preventing the cold air as well. Such has been the advantage of Himalayas. But of late, what we are witnessing is changes because of climate change, says this article. So what does the article say? Because of the increasing global temperature, because of increasing melting of the glaciers, what we will have is issues in the near future, and takes into example that if we continue to have drier and warmer scenarios, and if this is continued for the next 20 years from 2031 up until 2050, what we will have is water scarcity, says one of the papers published. So this paper goes on to say that climate change, socio-economic and demographic changes, that which has been introduced in this particular region, has put unprecedented pressure on all these water resources, leading to uncertain supplies, increased demands, higher risk of extreme events that which can trigger in this particular region. Apart from this, rapid urbanization has also been taking place in and around the Himalayan region. This has also meant that there is excessive migration, tourism and religious pilgrimage, which means there will be negative consequences because of the anthropological induced factors in the Himalayan region. So what this article currently goes on to conclude is that what we require is the proper water management and governance when it comes to the Himalayan region. If we are not able to keep up, if we are not able to sustain this, what we will have is disastrous consequences resulting in changing patterns of precipitation and Indian summer monsoon and western disturbances, says this article. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says Niti Aayog seeks to track impact of green verdicts. What is this article speaking about? We have the Supreme Court of India. The Supreme Court of India has delivered some of the landmark judgments when it comes to the environmental impact. What are we speaking about? Let's say, for example, there is one of the projects. One of the projects that has been initiated in one of the corners of India. One, whenever there is a project that is developed, what we have to focus on two important factors. One is on the economic factor, the other is on the environmental factor. When it comes to the economic factor, when there is a particular project, this will obviously result in growth of that particular project, which means that we would be able to generate the jobs as well. And at the same time, when jobs are given, this will provide livelihood means and mechanisms because of that particular project. It will also have the ancillary developments as well. Let's say, for example, there is a development of a mining industry close by to a particular region. If there is mining region that is developed, this also means there is backward linkage. This also means there is forward linkage as well. So not only is the requirement of mining industry required, but there will be other sectors which will also be developed in and around that particular region. So whenever there is a project that is developed, what we will have is the economic advantages. Apart from this, that particular project may also result in environmental problems as well. Let's say, for example, it can result in water pollution, or it can result in noise pollution, or it can also result in air pollution as well. Whenever there is excessive pollution, this may also result in health problems for people as well. Let's say, for example, if we are taking certain mining activities, if these mining activities are conducted in a particular region, this can actually make sure that the groundwater is polluted. When the groundwater is polluted, this can result in what is called as the health related problems. This can also make sure that there is arsenic or any other mineral in that particular drinking water. So what would happen? People would be suffering from health related ailments as well. So whenever there is a project that is coming up in any region, a balance of both, that is the economic condition and the environmental condition, have to be taken up. So what we require is the sustainable development. Both will have to be managed. Only focus on economics and not on environment can result in disastrous consequences, and only focus on environment, no focus on the economics, it also means people would be the major sufferers. What is this article speaking about? This article currently goes on to say that there have been number of landmark judgments which have been delivered by the Supreme Court of India. These judgments delivered by the Supreme Court of India has excessive focus only towards the environment, but has not taken into picture the economic factors, which means the Supreme Court, while it is delivering a particular judgment with respect to that particular industry or that particular scenario, has focused excessively only on the environmental factor and has not focused on the economy. Since it has not focused on the economy, this means the growth of that particular region will be under problem, jobs will not be created, and livelihood means and mechanisms for the people will also be impacted. So what is Niti Aayog looking at? Niti Aayog in the present scenario is looking at studying certain projects. There are 5 projects. One is the Mopa Airport, Sterlite Copper in Thoothukudi, iron ore mining in Goa, sand mining in Uttar Pradesh, and construction activities in and around Delhi. All these activities were stopped either by the Supreme Court of India or by the ruling of the National Green Tribunal as well, which meant that they have focused only on the environment. So what the Niti Aayog currently wants to do, it wants to study the economic impact because those projects were stopped by the NGT or by the Supreme Court of India. Why is this project being studied by the Niti Aayog? That is because they want to understand what is the impact impact of this particular issue. Only then we would be in a position to understand whether have we balanced it or it has tilted only towards the environment. So what is it doing right now? It is planning to look at one of the public discourse contributions, which means only when we are able to have enough idea about that particular project, we would be able to know whether it was a responsible judgment, whether it was a reasonable judgment, whether all aspects have been taken into picture, is what the think tank of the government, which happens to be the Niti Aayog, is looking at. Basically, the intent of this particular study is to analyze the cost and the benefit of certain judicial decisions, and it is not actually questioning the judicial intervention. It is not saying that the Supreme Court is wrong. It is not saying that the Supreme Court should not have interfered. It is not saying that Supreme Court is wrong at all, but it is only saying that there might have been what is called as the economic consequences. What we are doing is studying these economic consequences because that project did not take off or there was an abrupt end to this particular project. When this particular think tank came up with such a notification, there were environmentalists who have voiced concerns as well. They have said that why is Niti Aayog digging up to this particular issue? Why? Because the Supreme Court knows what its decisions are about, how important the environment is, and we also know for the fact that climate change can be a major devastation to the people. So what these environmentalists say is that Niti Aayog should not ideally conduct such an activity. But Niti Aayog says that we are looking into not because the Supreme Court is wrong, but only because we want to study the economic impact or the economic issue with respect to these judgments. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says India's internet startups on cusp of listing, says a report. There was one of the reports that was released by HSBC Global Research. According to this particular report, it says that India's internet startups that operate business ranging from food delivery to e-commerce to online insurance have been increasing over a period of time, which means that there are more companies which will be what is called as unicorns and what is called as the sunicorn. So in this particular backdrop, we have to understand some important definitions when it comes to this particular classification. What is called as a minicorn? Minicorn is one of the startups that is a startup having a valuation of over $1 million. These companies with the advancement can also become what is called as the unicorn companies as well. Then what we have is the Sunicorn company. A Sunicorn company is a startup with a valuation of more than $100 million or one that has received more than $500 million in funding. So these startups that have the potential to enter the unicorn club are what is called as the Sunicorn. Then what we have to remember is the unicorn. Unicorn is any privately held startup that's valued at $1 billion or more. So any company which has a valuation of more than $1 billion means that it is a unicorn company. Followed by this is a decacorn. Decacorn is a startup company that has a current valuation of over $10 billion. Finally, what we have is the hectacorn, a tech company valued over $100 billion is what is called as the hectacorn. This report currently goes on to say that India has nearly 42 unicorns when it comes to India, and a tech company is the second largest opportunity with a market of 48 billion by the year 2025, says this particular report. So in this particular backdrop, the article goes on to say that there are entrepreneurs, there are startup companies which are increasing in India, and the numbers have been constantly increasing. So it takes into example the food delivery. Let's say for example we have Swiggy, we have Zomato. It takes into picture the e-commerce. Let's say for example Flipkart can be taken as an example, and it speaks about insurance and other online platforms. So the article in crux speaks about that there are increasing number of entrepreneurs and startups who are using internet as a platform and ultimately providing job opportunities, delivering what is required for the country for growth and development. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about African swine fever. Kindly remember, this can be very important from your preliminary examination point of view. The African swine fever happens to be a severe viral disease affecting both the domestic as well as the wild pigs. So it can affect the wild boars as well as peccaries. But do remember, from the preliminary examination point of view, it is harmless to the human beings. This ASF was first discovered in Kenya back in the year 1920. So this was first seen in Africa in the years of 1920. This ACF is a highly contagious transboundary viral disease. It can be transmitted through direct contact between sick and healthy animals. It can also be transmitted indirectly through feed containing meat from infected animals. Biological vectors such as ticks of the genus Omethodorso and contaminated inanimate objects can also transmit this particular virus as well. So this particular virus as of now has no approved vaccine against the African swine fever. Since there is no vaccine as of now, the only option that all the farmers have is to kill the pigs when it is impacted. So the minute these pigs are killed, it means the livelihood problems of the farmers also increase. Why? Because their only source of living is this particular pig meat, and if they are killing it, ultimately means it results in major economic losses, threatens the food security, and limits the pig production in the affected countries. Also remember, when it comes to the symptoms, it includes fever, loss of appetite, low energy, abortion, internal hemorrhage, visible hemorrhage, and even death when it comes to the pigs. Why are we discussing this article? That is because there is one of the article which says natural mutation found in African swine fever virus. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about KA-226 helicopters. This can be very important from your preliminary examination point of view. So this happens to be a utility helicopter to be jointly manufactured locally by India and by Russia with the transfer of the technology. So when it comes to indigenization, India will be able to produce about 33% when it comes to this particular helicopter. Taking the whole helicopter, the indigenous content is about 27 to about 33%. This KA-226D is meant to replace the aging and obsolete Cheetah and Chetak fleet of Army and the Air Force. Do remember these two important facts. It can be important from your preliminary examination point of view. This is all we have to understand in reference to this article. One is it's a joint production between India and Russia. It will replace Cheetah and Chetak, and India has about 27 to 33% of indigenization when it comes to this particular manufacturing. This article says FSSAI caps trans fat in food products. What is this trans fat all about? What will be its impact on the health? How is it produced or how is it manufactured has all been explained on 17th of January 2021 under the first discussion. So kindly look into it. In the present scenario, there is a particular proposal made by the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India where it has amended the rules to cap trans fatty acids in the food products. So what has it gone to say? It has said that food products in which edible oils and fats are used as an ingredient shall not contain industrial trans fatty acids more than 2% by mass of the total oil fats present in the product from 1st of January 2022. What is this all about has been explained. So kindly look into our 17th January 2021 CNA. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, can a bad bank solve the growing NPA crisis? This particular issue is speaking about the asset reconstruction company. This has again been explained in our budget session which happened on Friday. So kindly look into the discussion with respect to the budget to understand what is this concept of bad loan, what are the advantages and concern. Everything has been explained in our budget session that happened last Friday. Now let's look into the mains practice questions. What do you understand by one person company? Discuss the changes introduced in budget 2021 and its significance. The next question, the Himalayan region is staring at a grim water future. Comment. So please write all your answers on the comment section. peer review, and also give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.